Sam. Sam's going to turn the camera on. Or is it already on? We're already on? Okay. All right, we're good? All right, thank you, everybody. So is it on? Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's for the people that aren't here.
Yes, yeah, no, I get it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, hopefully everybody can hear me here and online as well. If you can't hear me online, then hopefully you can call somebody and we'll try to adjust it. For folks who are here, if you want to come forward a little bit, that'll make it easier. I'm Tim Wilkins. I'm the treasurer of St. Luke's. Wow, okay. All right, again, I'm Tim Wilkins. I'm the treasurer here at St. Luke's. John Watson is the chair of finance. He's going to help me if I get stuck with anything. I'd like to thank Sam and Jack for helping with getting us live streaming and doing that part. And then Jamie helped us set up with the technology. So hopefully the screens work, and at one point he'll help me go through the screens. Oh, we're not going to have the screens? Okay, that's not working. Okay. All right, we'll do it without screens. All right, first, before I get into the details, I did want to kind of use this as an opportunity to make a plug. We've just recently switched software from Church Windows to Realm. Sorry. So Realm software is a software that a number of churches are using currently, including St. Albans, and everybody's very excited about it. Avery is working closely with Nina. Nina's kind of taking the lead, Nina being Nina Anderson, who's our financial administrator. It's going to be a bit of a rollout, but what they've seen so far already is it's a very exciting, very powerful new software package. The exciting part for parishioners is with Realm, you as a parishioner can go into your own profile. So if you need to change your phone number, change an email address, add some information about folks that are related to you that you want to have included, you can do all that yourself. You want to see where the status is on your pledge, you can see that right online. So a lot of pluses. The drawback is we had a lot of information in Church Windows that we're finding out was either backdated, was duplicates, so it's going to take us a while to clean it up. But once we've done that, then everything should be hopefully on Easy Street after that. Speaking of Nina Anderson, again, is our financial administrator. She does the bulk of the day-to-day work. She's a pleasure to work with. I would not be the treasurer if not for Nina. So we're very lucky to have Nina on board. She's been here a good couple years, so she's got a lot of nice history with us. On finance, we also have a solid finance team with John Watson as chair. For the endowment, it's Sam Spencer. Sam, unfortunately, couldn't be here today, so we're going to talk to the endowment a little bit. Unfortunately, without his slides, I can't do a lot, so I'll just kind of ad-lib a little bit on the endowment. What I'd like to do is talk about the endowment first, just so I can put that kind of behind us and really try to focus more not on 2022, but on 2023 budget. So for the endowment, we have an incredible group at FL Putnam led by Stephen Violin. Stephen has been our financial advisor for the endowment for a number of years, so we're very fortunate to have Stephen on board and to have the history that he's had with us. In fact, if folks are familiar with FL Putnam a little bit, we've been with FL Putnam so long that basically when we connected with them, they had an office in Boston, and that's where Stephen is, whereas now FL Putnam does have an office in Portland, but we continue our relationship with the office in Boston. Because of COVID, we've been having our meetings virtually, but we do hope in 2023 to at least have one meeting where Stephen will be here in person. So that should be a positive. On the endowment, there are currently 2 endowment accounts. The reason for having 2 endowment accounts is strictly a requirement of the bank where we have a loan. So basically, the two accounts are managed as one account. That one account is managed by Stephen with full allocation across all various different classes of sizes of companies, international, U.S., we've got stocks and bonds, so it's well allocated. He makes minor tweaks to it, but for the most part, we're always going to be fully allocated because none of us can figure out which way the stock market's going to go. So we make minor changes occasionally when there's a direction where we think the market's going. The other plus with the endowment is Stephen does have a small portion of it allocated to alternative investments, which have been a huge plus for us in 2022. So if you look online and you're looking at the report, you'll see that 2022 unfortunately was not a strong year for the market, but Sam included the previous 3 years' returns where the portfolio has done extremely well. So that's a plus there. The other thing with the two accounts, again, we have a loan that we have through the bank. The good news is the vestry just last week has authorized us to pay off that loan. We started the loan at the first of last year at $134,000. We've gotten it down to $50,000, but the vestry again approved us taking that loan from $50,000 down to $0. We were paying 5.1 or 5.2% on it. So it'll be good to get that behind us. As soon as that's done, I'm working with the bank to get a firm estimate to close it out. As soon as that's done, we'll talk to FL Putnam and get them to merge the two accounts, which makes it easier for them. Not really a big difference on how it's invested, just makes it easier for them as far as just managing, and for us just getting one statement instead of two statements. Within the endowment account, obviously there are multiple sub-accounts, I call them, and basically Nina and I manage that in the monthly reports, just estimating where they are. Okay, so basically FL Putnam doesn't manage how much of the endowment is part of the flower, how much is for prayer books, how much is part of the Howard bequest. We do that internally just by allocating it based on the percentages that we've had historically. Obviously, if a gift comes in to the endowment, then we adjust those percentages. The percentages don't change dramatically unless we get a really big gift, and then we'd be happy to readjust things as needed. Okay?
Could I just say just a couple of
Yes.
The endowments managed according to instructions which were put in place by investors every year. Sam Spencer.
Same one. Okay.
Okay. Every year, Sam Spencer, who's chair of the endowment, will certify that the endowment has been managed according to the vestry's instructions. Our spending policy is set out by the vestry. We spend 4%, a draw 4%, which is a very modest, conservative draw, and it's based on a 12-quarter average, which means that when the market goes down, like last year, our draw actually does not go down as you would expect, because the long period of draw smooths out the ups and downs. So I think that's important to bear in mind, that it's a constant and it's controlled. It's a controlled environment. So even though the numbers last year were not good, and they were not good for anyone, it was not just us, our draw in 2023 is actually going to be up, which is amazing. Thank you.
And just one other quick thing to add. So basically, I forget if John mentioned it. So we take 4% is what is taken out of the endowment, and that's basically a long-held principle of doing 4%. So again, we take those rolling quarters, we figure out what it is at the end of 2022, we figure out what that 4% is, and then they automatically, FL Putnam sends us that amount monthly automatically into our checking account. Okay, and that goes straight into the operating account. The loan has been on our books for quite a while. It started way back, for those who've been here, for a long time when we put in the new furnace. It was going to pay for itself pretty quickly. It was doing that, but then we needed to take a loan out for the chapel, work on the chapel. So basically, when we had to get the new loan, because you're always paying on the interest, but until we finally started paying down the principal, 2 years ago, we were still paying more on interest than we were on principal. Tim Reiniger, the previous treasurer, really worked hard to try to start paying down on the loan. I've continued that, and I'm again happy to say we've now got it down to 0, so that'll be a huge help going forward.
One other thing on the endowment, just to remember. Sometimes there are questions. We do have a socially responsible investing policy, which is quite strict. It focuses on screens, so there are specific investments the cathedral will not make. And some of the areas are the obvious ones: gambling, armaments, drugs, tobacco is in there. We're trying through FL Putnam to get more into positive socially responsible investing. They monitor, they have a powerful software program which actually reports to us every quarter what what they call ESG component of the investments is doing. And the focus is very much on trying to control our investments. And it's a very tricky thing. You can say, for instance, we don't invest in the 40 top emitters of toxic pollution. But, within that industry, there are all sorts of changes going on the whole time. And trying to monitor what's going on in a positive way is very difficult. It's very easy to say, well, we will not buy armaments stocks. But beyond that, where do you go? And so we do try to pay attention to that with FL Putnam's
And
help.
Stephen Violin,
Yeah.
that's a real specialty and a real passion that he has, which just works as a plus for us.
Right.
Linda. That's coming out of the operating fund. The question was, where did the $50,000 to pay off the loan come from? And that came from the operating account. And that's for several reasons why we were able to take it out of the operating account. For 2022, if you looked online at the reports that Avery had included in the epistle, we actually ended 2022 with net income. We normally don't do that, and we haven't done so in quite a while. So between the fact that we had net income for the year, and as importantly, if you then look at the balance sheet, you see that we're very fortunate that we're flush with cash, both in the operating account and then in the restricted accounts. And that's mainly because of the PPP loans that we got 2 years ago, and the fact that when we got the first PPP loan, parishioners did an incredible job continuing to maintain their pledges for us. So instead of being hurt by lower pledges because of COVID, we had very strong pledge support, and we got these loans from the federal government. So we still have this excess cash available to us, and because of that, I felt very confident and comfortable recommending to the vestry to pay off the loan. Plus, now going forward, we don't have that as an ongoing expense. Lastly, in June of 2023, that loan was going to no longer be at a fixed rate and was going to be at a variable rate, which was more than likely going to be substantially higher than what we were paying. So the real goal was to get it paid off at least by then. But getting it paid off now saves us even more money. Okay, so any other questions on Mike?
The draw flow set, I believe, is approved for President's time, remember?
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of commentary lately that that amount might be questionable, and have you all considered lowering that percentage?
We have not. The question is, have we considered taking the 4% draw out of the endowment and lowering that? From discussions with FL Putnam, they're comfortable using the 4%. Obviously, if the economy continues to deteriorate and there are other issues, we could look at that. But right now, that's not anything we're discussing on a regular basis. But it's something we might consider in the future, but not at this point.
Historically, originally it was 5%. We lowered it to 4%. Is government is being.
Yeah, I'll do that. So, but before FL Putnam came on board, we were spending more than 4%. We were spending closer to 5%. FL Putnam very strongly encouraged us to get down to 4%. It took us a while because we had to wean ourselves off that extra money, but we've been at the 4% level, John, for at least 5+ years, right? At least 5, if not, might be closer to 10.
The other key thing, too, as you know, is that we should make enough money to cover costs of investing and inflation. That's the key driver of all this.
So again, what John said is the key goal for the endowment. So the task basically for Stephen Violin is he's got to cover his cost, the cost that they charge us, plus inflation, plus our 4%, and maybe a little bit more so the endowment grows. I will tell you that because we're a nonprofit and the long relationship we've had with FL Putnam and the fact we have a fair amount of money with them, the actual percent that we pay to FL Putnam is very low. It's well below 1%. I don't have the exact figures. I can get them for you, but it is below 1%. The other thing we do with FL Putnam that they give us is basically the more money you have invested, the rate drops. So let's say the first 100,000, the rate is 0.9%. Anything above 100,000, then the rate is 0.8%, et cetera. And basically what they do is then quarterly, they'll assess where the accounts are and then figure out what the rate would be for them, and that's what they take. And there are no other charges by FL Putnam for the account. The account is held at Schwab, so there's some minor, and I mean minor, like $1 charges if we're trading stocks. So if we sell a stock, there is a small charge that we have to absorb. But otherwise, again, FL Putnam has no other charges other than the fee that they charge us. So the key behind that, for those if you're not as familiar, is basically, we want the account to grow. The only way FL Putnam, because they're getting a certain percentage, the only way they're going to make more money is if they make more money for us. So therefore, their incentive is the same as our incentive, which makes it easier and more comfortable for all of us. And it's easy to see. It's transparent. You know what it's going to be and how it's going to happen. All right, I'm going to move away from the endowment. Rebecca. We have various different, the question was what are the earnings that we use as our benchmark? And basically, depending on the portion, how the account is allocated, we determine that based on the S&P 500, the total bond market, et cetera. It's based on that percentage basis, but between those various different categories. Yep. All right, so again, I'm going to move away from the endowment and talk a little bit about the 2022 handout. So basically what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to focus on the 2023. So on this page, which is showing the revenue chart for 2022, only thing I want to mention here is how much of the revenue is coming in from basically pledges. So we have 68 or almost 70% of all money coming into St. Luke's is through pledges. So therefore, pledge more. That's what the point is, if you didn't figure it out. Okay? It does show that then the endowment gives us almost close to 20%. So again, the endowment is a very important part of the contributions for each year. Then the rest of it's lower percentages. But again, the key thing for me is for you to appreciate and understand that if it isn't for the parishioners and what they do for St. Luke's, our budget would not be in as good a shape as it is. All right, on the expense side, it doesn't quite tell you the story, but basically the key on the expenses is over 50% of our expenses are tied up in salaries. And that salaries isn't just what we're paying folks, it's the benefits, pension, it's all that. But basically, a large part of our budget we have no control over. Okay, so it makes it hard for us to kind of find wiggle room. So the only way to really adjust things is to try to find other ways to generate more revenue. We can do minor things, and we're working on that, but basically the salaries is the key driver of the expense side of the budget. In the same way, because of that, in 2022 and again in 2023, our expenses are lower because in 2022 we had Albert retired, Eleanor left, not so much Lynn England leaving because we did replace her fairly quickly with Avery. But in other words, when people leave, then it takes us a period of time before we're able to replace them. Therefore, we have those, quote, savings from not paying those salaries. Obviously, for this year, it's going to be the same situation with Ben leaving. We're not going to be paying as much to Paul St. Germain because he's half-time. We'll see what happens when we get an interim, but there may be some lag time. There'll definitely be a lag time before we get a replacement for Ben. So for 2023, we're again looking at a little bit of a cost savings in 2023. Not because we did anything, just because of changes in what we've got for staff. Oh, all right, and the other one is also for 2023, we definitely would like to have a second minister at some point, but that is not going to happen in 2023 because the new dean is going to want to pick and choose his or her assistant, and the assistant isn't going to want to come on board unless they know who their boss is going to be. So, Judd. Some benefits. So everybody gets sick time and vacation time. Avery, is full-time, so therefore he has other benefits, including health insurance if he wants it. Currently, we're not having to pay that because he's on his parents' plan, but that would include benefits. Avery is eligible and is participating in the pension. The sexton and the housekeeper don't have enough hours, but they do. We did for those. For the hourly employees, which is basically the sexton and the housekeeper, we did increase their pay. Not a huge amount, but we did increase it to get them above what the diocese had for a minimum. The other item I will mention on here is do not go on this chart which says that all we spend on outreach is 2%. That is totally incorrect. Only because of how we do the accounting. That 2% is basically what's in the operating budget that's available to the outreach committee to do with what they want, to basically divvy it up. We spend a lot of money on outreach through the restricted accounts. The restricted accounts would include the food pantry, St. E's, etc. Okay? Plus, Ben does a lot every single day with outreach, and he has a discretionary account. That is not included under the community outreach account. When we have St. E's here, or the food pantry, we're paying for the utilities, we're paying for that space. So we're absorbing that as part of our regular utilities and expenses as an operating account for the church. Therefore, again, it's part of outreach, but not included in outreach. The other big one that I'm looking at, Meredith, would be Haiti would be another example. Haiti is a very important outreach project that we do. It's not in the operating account because it's a restricted account, and that also gives us as individuals the ability, if you want to help with those causes, you give specifically to Haiti or the food pantry. That money goes straight to those organizations and does not go through the operating account. Is everybody okay or all set on that part? Yes. Yeah, so Linda's saying the alternative giving, which is basically November and December, is a specific, and other donations coming in during that time frame. But basically, we were able to get, coming in from that program, $26,000. So again, that's not going into the operating account. That goes to those specific organizations that you as individuals designate. So again, that does not show up, because again, this chart is strictly for the operating account. All right. I was not going to spend a lot of time on the summary because I want to get into the 2023 budget, which gives me a chance to talk in a little bit more detail about a few items. But if there are questions on that chart, I'm happy to take them. If not, I'm going to switch over to the approved 2023 budget. All right, so that, if you have it, or when you go back home and you're looking online, it's the 2023 approved budget as of 1/18/2023. Okay? Good news is, top of the line, proposed budget, sorry, I should have changed that. Approved budget for pledges is $470,000. Okay, that was compared to a budget last year of $456. We actually ended the year with $459,000, but we're trying to get to $470 for 2023. The other thing, if you're looking at that, there are a number of folks who, for various different reasons, and they're all their own decisions, don't want to do a formal pledge, but are very active and participate at St. Luke's and give money to St. Luke's. So the non-pledge contributions for the budget last year was $40,000. For 2023, it's $60,000. For 2022, we actually had, I think it was, I forget the exact number, $74,000. So there are a lot of folks who give on a regular basis, just they don't want to do it as a pledge. So that's why we want to make sure we capture all that. So the total for revenue contribution is, I've got an old, no, it's $544,500 coming in for contributions. That's plate contributions. Special collections is basically Easter and Christmas. Okay? The one item we don't get a lot of is the last item there under the contribution revenue, which is unrestricted gifts. We do occasionally get those, but that's an area that we do need to work on. A parishioner wanting to give a certain amount of money without any restrictions on it and not designating it strictly for endowment. And Judd, that'll come up in a little bit later. You'll see how that's where we do that with. Rental revenue, a couple things there. One, the biggest thing, 2 years ago, we got a fair amount of rent coming from Mercy Hospital. That went away since they're no longer across the street. We were able to get a few folks interested in renting. One of those was 75 State Street. They're not continuing that in 2023, so that's an area we're still looking to try to increase our revenues from parking. Obviously, for parking revenue, they can do it Monday through Friday. Don't want them doing that on Sunday, so we got to find the right folks who are willing to use it Monday through Friday. And there are folks out there, and there's definitely good revenue to be had, so that's an opportunity. Rental of the building is definitely increasing now that COVID is not necessarily behind us, but it's not as bad as it used to be, so we've got a lot more events coming on. We've got quite a few already scheduled for this year. Christian, I'm sure, is working on finding more, but that'll be another source of revenue. Again, it's not going to pay off all our bills, but again, it all adds up. The kitchen is an area that we're still working on. Kind of took a step back on the kitchen due to the city of Portland having so many requirements that were placed on us. We thought we just basically had to get approval from the state. The state was very easy to deal with. The city of Portland, unfortunately, not so. But we finally crossed that bridge. Everything's now approved. Dawn is working to get some clients. She did, unfortunately, lose a few clients just because they couldn't wait. They had to find something. So we're hoping that by the end of this year, we'll get to a point where at least breaking even. It's going to take us a while to build up a clientele, but once we've done that, then that should again provide a source of revenue. Again, won't be a huge amount, but the other thing, our focus really on that is as much to produce revenue, but also to be part of the wider community. Not only for engaging folks within the community, but also having some of the folks who are using the kitchen be folks who are looking to basically start a business. So we have a woman, I forget where in Africa she came from, but Mariama is very interested and is going to be starting up a business. We've got a mother in January. We've got a mother and son who do sauces. I forget where they're from. Thailand. Then there's somebody from either South America, Central America, or Mexico who wants to do something. So some real opportunities there. And as we're doing that, we're also looking at opportunities to not only use the kitchen, but also use the lower hall. So for anybody who likes to cook and remembers when you could take cooking classes at Stonewall, can't do that anymore. It's a perfect opportunity for us to then do that either ourselves or bring in a chef who wants to do that and open it up to folks to come enjoy that meal, learn how to cook a little bit. So lots of different things we can do with the kitchen. We do need to be careful with it. It is a true commercial kitchen, so we can't just let myself go in there and start cooking on it because I'm gonna destroy it. So you have to know what you're doing to use it correctly. So we're trying to manage that part, but some good opportunities there. Operating revenue, the good news there is there are 2 trusts that are managed by the diocese, so we have no control over it, but we're the beneficiaries of the income from it. So that's the Codman and the Hamlin Trust. So we get that, we get automatic deposits into the checking account from those 2 trusts that are managed by the diocese. The Hamlin Trust is specifically set up for music. We spend a lot more on music than we get from that source or from our endowment that's designated to music. So that's really not a problem we have to manage too closely, but there's plenty of money that does come in to help with that. The diocese does use the cathedral for various different events. They actually have a couple of parking spots that they're not using a lot, but they're still paying us. So the diocesan use of the cathedral is another area. And then the biggest one there is the transfer from the endowment funds. And again, as John alluded to, you can see that for 2023, the total transfer from the endowments is going to be almost $149,000, whereas for 2022, it was just under $139,000. And again, depending on where the markets go for the next couple of years, if we have a couple tough years, at some point that figure, because of the rolling average, will go down. But because of the strong past 3 years, we'll actually be getting more from the endowment for 2023. The only change I made for fundraising was we had $10,000 for the fair and $5,000 for other. We haven't really done anything with other, so until somebody here comes up with an idea and is really willing to take the lead on it, I took that $5,000 out. To me, it wasn't very realistic. So for fundraising, we have $10,000. We did get just under $10,000 in the fair this past year, which isn't bad considering we hadn't had it in a few years. But the fair is a lot of work, doesn't generate a lot of income, but it's, again, another opportunity to open up the church to the community. I find it a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun to get together and to chat and see the cathedral being used in a different space than like we do on Sunday worship, and has the potential to do, we can do a lot more with that if we all work together on it. The only little story I will tell you is a long time ago, we had a parishioner whose husband was in World War II, had some object that he donated or she donated. It just happened to be at the time where there was going to be an auction in New York City through one of the big auction houses where this particular object was perfect for it. We made the cover of that auction. Barry Fernald and myself went down to New York City and went to the auction, and I forget, Phyllis, do you remember 60,000? It was around 40,000, 50,000 that we got from that one item. So you never know, miracles can happen. Just look through your attics and find something. All right, so the other key then, moving on now, is looking at salaries. The key on the salary section is obviously then trying to figure out what we're going to do for covering our expenses as far as salaries. Under the dean section, basically I've got the dean's salary for January and then the 3 months that he's going to have for his paid sabbatical. I have no idea what the interim's going to be. I don't know when they're going to start. They're not going to start any earlier than May. I think it's going to be a lot later than May myself. But so basically I've got what I call a plug figure of $80,000 for the interim dean. So that would be whatever that dean requires as far as if there are other expenses other than straight salary, I'm calling that $80,000. Okay. I've also built into it, although I'm not sure we'll necessarily spend it in 2023, would be $20,000 for a search for a new dean. Obviously, the majority of the initial effort on the search is going to require us as a congregation to decide what kind of qualities, what do we want in a new dean. So we'd need to do that before we even initiated a search. But if we have those expenses before the end of the year, there's $20,000 in there. I think Jamie will back me up, and the vestry did because they approved it. But I feel strongly that we need to have, when we're back to full strength, we need at least 2 ministers full-time at St. Luke's. So for that, I also included $20,000 to continue to add to our reserve, specifically for a second minister, a canon, in the future. So again, that will not happen in 2023, but that puts more money aside, so we have that in reserve, because for those who came to the presentation that Jamie did with some support for me, but his committee, we cannot have 2 full-time priests and have a net operating income budget. Just won't happen with the way we're running things today. So the good news is, right now we're flush with cash. We've got a fair amount built up into our vestry restricted account for salaries. So I think the first year we get to that point won't be a big deal. But after that, we either have to have a lot more pledges, a lot more new members, or a lot more money coming in. So the good news is we have a little extra time now to work on that. But it's going to require everybody's effort to get to that point. But at least we've got time to do it. The problem is, if we delay, then once we get to that point, our options are then limited in how we get to that goal. All right, let's see, what else? All right. All right, several people, and Mary's here, so we do the flower support. Flowers are a very important part of St. Luke's, or at least for a lot of us. Flowers are basically dependent on individuals contributing money to go to the flower account. So the flower account is a restricted account, doesn't get as much visibility as the food pantry or St. E's. We do have, within the endowment over time, people have designated money and the endowment strictly for flowers. Unfortunately, that gets us about $1,000 per year from the endowment for the flower fund. Obviously, folks do contribute to the flower account as well. It just hasn't been as hearty as it was before COVID. So we do have extra money going into the flower fund. So I'm showing $3,500 in the budget for 2023, which would be $1,000 from coming from the endowment, and then $2,500 coming straight out of our budget. What we'll do, to be honest, the way we'll probably manage that is we'll move the $1,000 immediately, and then I'll work with Mary and Kathy. If they need more money, then we'll move more of this balance of $2,500 into the flower fund. The key there is, if you want to see flowers, please consider making a donation to the flower folks, and then that money would go straight into the restricted account, and Kathy and Mary would smile every day they saw you if you do that. So a quick plug for the flower fund. The other is, some people would be very upset if I even mentioned this, but we do have some beautiful silk flowers, but most folks don't want to see silk flowers. They want to see real flowers. So the only way we can do that, again, is if you contribute, because obviously, like everything else, flowers cost more money today. Judd. All right, so what Judd was asking is, when it's summertime and obviously things are finally blooming in Maine, could folks find a way to bring their flowers from their garden in? And Mary and Kathy are both nodding their heads and saying, without a doubt, please do, because that makes it even a prettier. Yeah. So what Kathy was elaborating, that you don't even need to have a flower garden. If you're out walking, pick some field flowers, and Kathy will help you if you have questions on what field flowers. Just don't pick any poison ivy. All right, on the administration section, the key there is we do have some fairly significant expenses with IT. That'll continue to be the case. Obviously, to keep up with technology, that's going to cost us some money. Nina Anderson is paid as a contractor, so she's under contracted accounting services. Staff salaries, for the most part right now, that's Avery. Communications and marketing. Avery is doing an incredible job, but he can't do everything by himself. We really need some help in communications and marketing. We're not experts on IT. If you've got some IT experience, that's another area we really need help on. But basically, to help Avery out, I just put in a plug figure of $5,000 for communications and marketing, so he has some money to try to do some marketing. We're not sure how much he needs, how much he's going to spend, but I've got something in there, so at least he's got something to start with. Kitchen manager is basically Don working part-time. The one thing I did miss on that is for the kitchen for 2023, we were able to, thanks to Liz Parsons, we are getting a grant for almost $20,000 from the diocese. I forget, a good bit of it's to cover Don's salary. The other part is for capital improvements, mainly to do some work downstairs, either in the lower hall or in the kitchen. A little bit for the upper kitchen. Mainly for the upper kitchen, that's going to have to come from the operating account, which again, we're coordinating that with Claire, but we can get that done. So that we do need to work on that sooner than later, because for instance, Jamie today had to go down to the kitchen and get coffee cups, so we didn't have to use paper. But if we were able to make some improvements in the upper hall kitchen area, then hopefully we could have a setup for coffee hour or small events in the upper hall and not have to bother to go to the kitchen in the lower part of the building. All right, let me get back to where I was. All right, the other thing, and Jamie might have to jump in here a little bit, we've been kind of on a waiting list to try to get some green energy for electricity. That's come through. Electricity is still very high. Both our fuel and our electricity are quite high, but our electricity right now, I'm not sure, I need to call and get a little bit more information, but right now our electric bill is lower because we've got our source for our energy is Next amp. So again, not sure how long that's going to last, but that's a little bit of a plus right now. But unfortunately, no real solutions on natural gas for the heating. That one's not going to be as easy. Solar panels are not, is Fred here, the problem with solar panels is because we're a historic building, the likelihood of getting solar panels on our roof is not good. Okay. We'd love to do it, but we can't do it without other people giving us their blessing. Okay? All right, episcopate and assessment are basically charges from the diocese based on how many parishioners we've got and also what our budget is. So basically that's our contribution to help the diocese operate. At the same time, obviously they're giving us money as well, but we're giving them a reasonable amount of money. And again, that's based on our budget and also the number of parishioners we have. All right, under the restricted funds, which was the summary of the restricted accounts, I'm going on to this page. Not a lot I'm going to speak to here. I did want to mention the capital campaign has a balance of just under $28,000, $27,500. So that's the Living Stones campaign. So that campaign has ended some time ago, but we're still getting a little bit of money coming in. But the key at this point is to try to find projects and get that money spent. And that's Claire and the Buildings and Grounds Committee is working on that. There are a couple of things they're doing right now. We've got a door for downstairs that's much easier for handicap access. We are working on a sign for out front. The sign for out front does need to go to a historic group within the city of Portland, which we think we have a good rapport with. So both of those key items will probably take most, if not all, the $27,000. Fred mentioned just a second ago that at some point we're going to have to replace the roof. This is not a small roof. It's also very tall. It's also slate. So guess what? We're going to need another capital campaign at some point. Not immediately, but at some point we're going to have a capital campaign. We've already have had issues, as everybody has seen, with water coming in, whether that's the plaster on the wall or the roof, we can argue with, and everybody likes to, the roofers thinks it's the plaster guys say it's the roof guys. But we do have some moisture issues. We do have a small issue with the skylight, and it's not so much the skylight, it's more the flat roof and the design. That's another area that's going to cost some money. We do have, since the building maintenance is impossible to predict, especially the bigger projects. So we do have within the restricted account, we do have $20,000 every year that we move from the operating account into a building restricted account. So that basically gives us a little bit of extra. It's not going to pay for a new roof, but if something comes up, it gives us more than what we have in the operating account for building maintenance, which will come in handy. The other one, if folks use the elevator, 2022 was a good year for the elevator. 2021, not so much. That elevator is old and not easy to fix. And a lot of people rely on it. So at some point, we got to do something with that elevator. So again, another area that's going to require a fair amount of effort. Looking at Jack, I will say that we're trying to make improvements on our ability to live stream and whatnot. Jack has got a very nice quote working with Sam. Jack, who's the vendor for that? Who's the vendor for the live stream? Yeah, so Canfield Systems does our current system now, and we're just looking to enhance that and improve it. Okay, the equipment is 30 years old for that, so it's more than time to replace that. We do have a quote. I'll be bringing that up with the vestry. We got various different ways of paying for that, but again, we've got the cash. It's just figuring out how to, what account to take it from. But that I'm hoping we'll be able to deal with at next month's finance and vestry meetings. But that will happen, and that again will be an improvement for all of us, especially for the folks who are on the live stream side. All right, I will end by saying that to me, with the dean leaving, that gives us an opportunity. Again, I'm going to parlay off of his sermon a little bit. The only way we're going to be successful as a cathedral is, one, have strong leadership, but also community involvement. For whatever reason, in my humble opinion, it's my opinion only, we need to work on getting more people to volunteer at St. Luke's. In my memory, maybe my memory's not so good, but it used to be that was not as big a deal. For whatever reason, part of it's COVID, but we need to get people to volunteer. Again, I mentioned IT support, communications and marketing. In the bulletin today, there was a request to say, look, if you want coffee hour, guess what? Raise your hand. It's easy to do the coffee hour. We provide the coffee. It's very good coffee. The coffee machine is easy to use. But somebody needs to volunteer to manage that, come in and make it, have a few goodies, etc. So anyway, I think that's another area that we as a congregation, not only ourselves, but also talking to our fellow parishioners to say, look, how can we participate and help out? Avery's going to have a lot more things to do because he's going to be solo 3 days out of the week. Paul, a little bit, I've spoken to him on the phone. I don't know for folks who've met him. He seems like an incredible person. He's already working, even though he's not scheduled to start till the 1st of February. So I think we'll need additional help in the office. But again, if you have skills that you think we could use, that's where we really need you. And it doesn't take a lot. Finance, we meet once a month. Endowment meets quarterly. Helping Avery would be, one time a week. If we had again, coffee hour is easy because basically if we all do a little bit, we'd all need to do, 1 to 2 Sundays a week, or you take the Flower Guild, Outreach Committee, whatever organization, and picks 3 or 4 Sundays that they do it as a group, and gives them a chance to then talk about their program, their ways to have the coffee hour to be fun. That's all I've got. Anybody else? Other questions?
So Tim, don't leave. You just asked about volunteers. I just want to remind everybody that Tim is a volunteer and puts in huge amounts of hours.
The one benefit we've got is we've got an incredible team. So again, I've got a great finance team backing me up, working with Nina. Again, finance are all volunteers. Nina's paid, but she's not paid full time, and she puts in a lot of hours. But it's because we all work together. And again, it's also it's work, but it is fun as well.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you. The idea that we ended last year with a little bit of a surplus, we have a balanced budget going forward, and we have no debt. Those things, there's a lot to be thankful for, and it really is because of all of you and because of your leadership. So thank you, everybody. This today is a tradition here to help make the annual meeting go smoother, and so I really do appreciate you being here. If there's more questions, John is around, Tim is around, and all the others that were mentioned. But thank you for joining us today.